Right. Thank you so much for everybody for joining. I am Jessica. I am the director for Startup Grind Orange County. And today I am super excited to welcome Pat Riley, who is the CEO of GAN and the managing partner for GAN Ventures. This is our third annual mental health awareness event. As a previous co-founder myself, I know the struggles of trying to run a startup and scaling that startup and trying to balance life. And so this is also for myself, and hopefully everybody in the community will also find value in it. And it's not just for, people who are founders, but really anybody who is trying to figure out best practices on really, being able to work through some really hard things. Founders just, we tend to have a lot on our shoulders. And so we can get stuck in the muck and not taking care of ourselves. So I'm so happy that I was able to connect with Pat, and we got on talking about this, and he was so gracious enough to say, yes, absolutely, I will come to talk with everybody. So thanks for that, Pat. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it right back to you.
Great. Well, Jessica, number one, thank you for having me. Number two, thank you for making this a topic for founders. I think we're in a really unique place where not only as an industry, we're able to talk about this, but there's groups like Startup Grind and others that are prioritizing this talk. So kudos to you all as well for prioritizing this. I'm going to share my screen if that's cool. If you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And let me know, make sure this shows up okay, and we will go from there. So can you see this okay? Is it showing up fine?
Yep, looks great.
All right, great. Well, the topic of today's discussion is the whole founder. And why it's this discussion is, if you ask many of us, like, what do we feel like as founders? A lot of us go, I feel like it's really good, but something's missing. Or I feel like it's really good, but this one part isn't coming together as much as I want. Or it's really good, but for blank. And I feel like it's this thing of like, we're not completely whole as founders. So my goal for all of you all today is that all of you would have the resources and knowledge that you need to become who you were born to be. And I hope this talk is one of those things that helps you get here. For quick background, I currently run GAN, which is a highly curated community of some of the world's top tech accelerators in the world. I also run GSSN, which is the Global Startup Studio Network. It's also a community of the top startup studios in the world. I run a VC fund, but I love actually talking about my education. I thought I was going to be a mental health psychologist, which is what all my training is in. But effectively, I ended up doing the business route instead, and ultimately getting to do those three roles. But all my education is in mental health, which is really fun to be able to bring this into this world. But with that, I want to bring up this next stat, which is, many of you have seen this on Crunchbase, and these are the reasons that they say startups fail. So 23% of the time, startups fail because it's not the right team. 30% of the time, Crunchbase found that the startup founders lose focus. 13% of the time, startups fail because there's disharmony among the team. Another way of saying it, it's not the right team. 9% of the time, the founders lose passion, and 8% of the time, founders have burnout. Another way of saying this is that 66% of the time that startups fail are usually due to soft, we'll say, behavior, or maybe we'll say mental health related issues, or how we engage with other people. And I would just say, effectively, I actually believe, like, while this slide here is really important, this slide here is really important, I actually believe so much of that is rooted in these next two things. And it's that, number one, I think so much of what we struggle with as founders is both anxiety, which is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. Like if you think about how much anxiety we have about an issue we have with a teammate, right? Or anxiety we have about if we're going to get business done, right? Or anxiety about our future, which leads us to burnout, right? So much of the reasons that we saw companies fail stem from anxiety. And also, two, I see many times, and we'll get to this in just a second, how many times those anxious thoughts lead to depression, or our depression leads to our anxiety. And you all, I assume, know what the definition for depression is, right? But it's repeated feelings or thoughts characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities causing significant impairment in daily life. And we've all felt this way. But here's what here's what we're going to dig into today, is that anxiety and depression are friends. You very rarely find a high anxious person that's not depressed, and vice versa. You very rarely find a depressed person that's not highly anxious. And we see this in founder data. So this came from a bunch of researchers out of the University of California in San Francisco and UC Berkeley and Stanford. And what they did is they looked at how much anxiety and depression was prevalent in startup founders versus the public. And here's what I want to highlight here. On that first chart there, 49% of entrepreneurs say that they have some sort of mental health condition compared to 32% of the general population. 30% of founders said that they've struggled with depression, where 15% of the general population said they have. 29% of founders said they have ADHD compared to 5% of the population. 27%, almost the same as depression, of founders said they struggle with anxiety compared to 26% of the general population. And you see substance abuse and bipolar disorders also being a large part of entrepreneurs. And none of this, to me, comes across as feeling like a whole founder, as founders that will say have it all together. When we see stats like almost half of founders report some sort of mental health condition, I feel like we have an opportunity here. And that's why I want to come back to this goal, which is I hope and pray, both from this talk and all the future talks that you have and stuff that you get into, that you would have all the resources and knowledge to become who you were born to be. But in light of that, I want to jump into just a few things I think we can then do with all this information we have, both about the fact that startups are failing because of the things we're struggling with personally and interpersonally, and because we personally are struggling with many of the mental health illnesses we just talked about. But I first want to start off with this statement here, which is, I think most of us actually look at anxiety and depression as really bad things. When Pat Riley feels anxiety, I usually find myself going, what in the world is wrong? Something is off that I need to go fix. Or when I'm really depressed, I usually go, man, it's like something's off. And frankly, that's probably right. There's something, we're gonna get into that in a few minutes too. But I'm first of all trying to reframe this and go, actually, every time I have anxiety, it's informing me of something. It's informing me that I need to pay attention to something that's going on. It's telling me information. A quick example is that, I think as I usually get ready for talks, like this one, I usually get a little bit nervous, right? I usually get anxious coming into these talks. And it's, and I think before I've gone, Pat, don't be anxious. You've done this a bunch of times. You know this talk up and down. You're going to be just fine. But it's interesting. My body, it's literally my body telling me, Pat, get ready. Get amped up for this. Like, you are going in to give this talk to a group of founders that is also thinking about anxiety and depression as much as you are. You need to prepare yourself. You need to get ready. So what I want to highlight here is, I could look at my anxiety and go, damn it, Pat, like, I can't believe you're dealing with this again. Or you could come and go, buddy, thanks for alerting me to this. Thanks for alerting me to get ready for this great talk I'm about to give and allow me to get amped up. So I just want to first of all start here and go, maybe we start with reframing this whole thing from being they're horrible things to maybe they're a gift telling us things. Then I think if we believe that, then I actually believe we can actually start digging in to what's going on. And that way, and I think what we'll dig into now is, I believe there's an short-term opportunities for us to work through our depression and anxiety. Then I believe there's actually some longer-term solutions for us to dig into our depression and anxiety. And I'm going to dig into both of those today because I think they actually go hand in hand and we have to be working on both equally. So first, let's jump into some ways that we can all dig into in the short term, deal with our anxiety and depression. So again, anxiety and depression are a gift. They're always telling us something. So when we have emotions, immediately, right, I want you to start doing this. There's three things we're going to dig into, which is when especially anxiety comes up, I want you to sort of take a second and do this with me. I want you to recognize it, embrace it, and work through it. And here's what I mean. When you have anxiety that first comes up, I want you to stop and just go, what in the world is happening? Like, let's talk about me coming today, right? Right now it's 12:47 here in Denver, Colorado. At 12:28, right, I was getting a little anxious for this. What's happening? My palms start sweating. My heart's beating a little bit faster. I was getting a little sweaty, like literally like in my elbows. I'm but what it is, I think before I would have gone like, ow, stop. But I think what I'm trying to do much more is go, oh my gosh, my palms are sweating. I'm getting a little like anxious here. I'm getting a little sweaty in my shirt. My heart's beating a little fast. It's all because you want to give a good talk, right? It's all because you are anxious about this talk, and that's okay. There are situations I have in our company where I will hear bad news about a client or about a competitor, and immediately I'll feel this like pain in my chest, and it's affecting my body going, hey, there's like a deep something to like pay attention to. And I think before I've gone, get away. I don't want it. But I think the more that I sit here and go, okay, I feel that. I hear that. I hear you, heart, like actually causing pain. Not because I'm having a heart attack. It's just like where I carry some stress. It alerts me to the fact of like, hey, I need to pay attention to this. Because I think the second thing is, then I can start embracing it. Then as a founder, I can go, this is real. This anxiety is worth paying attention to. That competitor is real. That competitor is something that I need to like lean into. Because I also think what happens is that like, if that continues to happen, like if I continue to hear about that competitor, my body, it's super weird, right? My body's going to continue to alert me whether I want it to or not. So what I want to encourage you to do is just go like, number one, embrace the anxiety and then breathe. And again, this is short term. So we'll get to long term in a second. But in that moment, literally what I will do at 12:29, before I give the talk, before I jumped in, I literally sat here and I took a deep breath in my nose. And then I breathed out. And I joined the call and I was smiling because I'm going, man, I was super nervous, but now I'm here and I'm really excited to give this talk because I'm embracing the fact that I was nervous. And now I'm ready to give this thing. Or when I have a competitor comes up, right? I'll feel that in my chest and I'll go, yeah, I got to pay attention to them. But I think the final thing is this, it's what are the messages telling me along the way, right? What are the messages telling me that are happening when I recognize it and embrace it and work through it? And this is sort of the final part in the short term of going, there are ultimately 6 core thoughts that are coming at the root of every anxiety that's coming our way as founders. And I want you to sort of stop for a second and just ask yourself this question. Say, what is a recent negative thought that you've had about yourself? Just take one quick moment. Just think about like, what's one quick negative thought you've had over the last week or two about yourself? So I've got mine, right? But effectively, I've found, and the research shows that most of our negative thoughts boil down to one of these 6 messages here. I'm helpless. I'm not good enough. I don't matter. I'm unlovable. I'm a fraud, or I'm not safe. Right? You think about coming in today. What are the messages I'm telling myself as I'm getting ready to give this talk? Well, it's like, oh, I'm a fraud. Why is Pat Riley the one who's supposed to give this message? And that's why you even see me today going, oh, this is what I studied, right? I'm capable of giving this talk. Or another one of going like, I'm not good enough, right? Maybe I'm not going to be talented enough or communicate in a way that's helpful, right? But I think about there's other situations too where you go like, oh, there's a competitor coming our way. Oh shoot, I'm helpless, right? Or I'm going to be unlovable if this company doesn't succeed. Or like, hey, if you're dealing with a situation of work where you're in conflict and really anxious about an employee, a colleague, maybe you go, I'm not safe, or maybe you feel like, oh, I'm not going to deal with it because I don't matter. But my point is, all the data I have found has shown me that most of our anxiety comes from one of these 6 core messages that we're telling ourselves. But going back to 1 second of just going, to get to that place requires us to first of all recognize it. What is our body telling us? So then ultimately embracing it and going, this information is real and it's helpful, and then breathe through it. And then finally going, what's the message actually telling me? What core thought is actually coming my way that could be true, but probably isn't entirely true? So that's the first thing. And I found this to be incredibly helpful as I have dealt with, we'll say, short-term anxiety. But there is a longer-term opportunity I think we have here as founders as well. There's a longer-term opportunity to work through not just, we'll say, the short-term Band-Aid, which is incredibly important. And all that we just talked about there, it comes from something called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's my favorite type of therapy by far. I've also found it to be the most scientifically backed type of therapy. If you go to CBT therapy, you will find that constantly you're going, what anxiety do I feel in my body? Where do I feel in my body? How do I work through it? What are the messages telling me? That's cognitive behavioral therapy right there. This right here is much more about going, what messages do I constantly tell myself on a daily, hourly, second basis that are causing me to act in a certain way? So here's what I would just want to highlight is this, when we work through this. I think, first of all, as we begin to sort of think about how we think about ourselves holistically, I think it's just important to realize we as founders need to get a way to do this work. What you see here is a picture of a homeless encampment in Philadelphia. A bunch of my friends started a house a few blocks away from this homeless encampment to actually serve the people you see here. They wanted to just come serve them with food, try to give them shelter, get them back in jobs. And it's this beautiful home, right, of like 15 to 20 people living together in, again, the center of Philadelphia. But when you go to their house, it's really fun. There is this sign on the wall that says this. It says, everyone wants a revolution, but no one wants to do the dishes. Effectively it's saying everyone wants to be here serving the people, but no one wants to be back at the house doing the hard work of keeping the house clean to actually go and serve the people out there. And I think that's just a good analogy for, I think, where most of us are as founders. We're constantly going, oh man, we gotta serve our clients. We gotta serve our team. I'm sitting here going, man, I gotta serve my family. This is a picture of my wife and 2 daughters. I gotta go, man, I got to love these kids. I got to take care of these kids. I think about my team here. Like, I'm going, how much of my time and energy I'm sitting here going, man, I got to make sure they're taken care of. They have what they need. It's my job to be a servant leader and show up for them. But I find so often that I am not taking care of myself. I am not doing the classic, put on your mask first before taking care of everyone else. And I think if you talk to investors, myself included as an investor, I tell my investments all the time, I need you to focus on you more than I do your company. And I care about you more than I do your company, because I ultimately your company will be more successful because of it. But I think investors need you to care about you. Frankly, your colleagues need you to care about you, and your family needs you to care about you. So I just say, first of all, let's just give ourselves permission to be able to go and do this work. I think the second thing out of the 4 things we're going to go through is that let's just realize that your values drive your thoughts, which drive your emotions, which drive your behaviors. Your values drive your thoughts, which drive your emotions, which drive your behaviors. This is just a classic example here of, I have a value of celebrating. I love celebrating. I also have a value of loving Oklahoma football. This is me at the Oklahoma-Texas game 2 years ago. I'm in the stands. We were losing to Texas 41-20, and we came back, and this is literally the point where we tied Texas 41-41, and I'm just on top of the world. This value of me celebrating drove a thought for me going, this is incredible, to an emotion of me looking like that, a feeling like that, to behavior of me looking like that. What I'm trying to get at is all of our values drive our behavior, which means then that if our values drive our behaviors, we need to spend a lot of time understanding what our values are. And that's where this comes back into play. Because if we find over and over and over again that there are certain messages that keep tripping us up, what we're going to find is that there are certain values that may be misplaced or unhelpful as we go and build businesses. For instance, let's go back to this list for a second. If we constantly are finding ourselves saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because my company isn't successful, because I'm not married, because I'm not rich enough, because I'm not funny enough, because I'm not attracted enough. Effectively, we're placing our value on one of these things having to happen for our ultimate success. We're valuing getting married to be the thing that's providing for, that's leading us to us going, I'm not good enough. So my point here is going, it is so important for us to go, what is the core message? Because the core message is actually telling us what we value as people. And here's where I'm going. I think a helpful exercise to me as I'm digging into my values is this. It's me going, I'd love for you to just do this with me as well, is go, where do you, as a founder, get the most anxious and sad? And then using those 6 things we just talked about, what's the core? These are called core stories. What's the core story behind it? And what does that say about what I value? So here's just a quick thing. Let's just do this real quick. This might be an example of something you're dealing with. Where do you get the most anxious and sad as a founder? Well, I might get anxious and sad when I see other more successful founders that have raised a lot of money, founders that have exited, founders that were able to get to 10 people, founders that got into that accelerator. But maybe what's the core story behind it? Maybe the core story behind it is that I'm not good enough. But what does that say about what you value? Ultimately means your value is that I want to be successful with my company or else I won't be loved. So my point there is it's going, if what we value ultimately leads into the behavior we have, if we constantly tell ourselves, I need my company to be successful or else I won't be loved, we're going to an empty well over and over and over again, using our company to make us feel loved that won't turn out to be positive. So let's try this again, right? With these questions again. What would happen if you get most anxious and sad when you're in a strong disagreement with someone at work? Maybe the core story of those 6 again was, I'm not safe. And what does that say? It may say that you're valuing security and peace over progress, right? You may value that the fact that like you want to have easy relationships, calm relationships with everyone around you. But that means you might be valuing that over disagreement, which leads to progress. So we'll do one more here. Let's ask yourself, when do you as a person get most anxious and sad? Well, it's when you ask your team to do things and no one listens. What's the core story behind it? You might be going, well, I don't matter anymore, right? But ultimately, what does that say what you value? Well, you value that you want people to respond to your good work, which may be a good value. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get after is this. If you go and do this process and go, when do you get most anxious and sad? List that out. Go over what the core story is. And finally, you go, what does that say about what you value? You will get so much information about what you value and what your values are. You may find yourself going, oh, I'm actually valuing peace over everything. I'm actually valuing monetary gains over everything. I'm actually valuing looking like an executor more than anything. But my point is, until you actually understand what your values are, you're sort of going at things without a North Star. You don't know where to go, and then you're constantly just having your anxiety feed you. But the final thing I'll just end with this is, I think as you start then figuring out what you value, figure out where there's dissonance. Figure out where there's a place where you go, oh, that's a value that is causing me anxiety, but that's not the value I want in my life. Start modeling the type of values that you want and share that with your community. And one of my favorite people in the world, Elaine Rasmussen, she's a leader in the DEI space. She put us this. She said, if you as an individual leading an organization don't value this work, don't value this new way of thinking, there is no way that it can be transmitted to anyone else. It is a journey that you have to decide to go on as an individual and how to determine to put it into practice. We are talking about some pretty amazing things as founders today of how do you deal with your short-term anxiety and how in the world do you process what your values are as a human being, and how do you actually evaluate which ones are the appropriate values to have and which ones may need some additional work. And if we're not doing it, who will? So my push to all of you all today is, it's a journey you've got to decide to go on as an individual, and how to determine how you're going to put it into practice is something I am so excited to hear what you end up doing. So thank you all so much. It's a pleasure talking with you all today, and I'd be happy to answer any and all questions either over email as you listen to this or on today's call. So thanks so much for this. And again, thanks so much for letting me talk about this today.
Thanks so much, Pat. That was great. Definitely, a lot of things that I personally have also, definitely gone through a lot of those 6 on my list. And, being in this kind of space, it's hard sometimes to remember to like. I remember one of my co-founders saying, every time I give you bad news, you tend to like swallow it. Like I can physically see you swallow that bad news. Like that's just my way of accepting it in order for me to go forward. So when you said that, like breathe in, I'm like, I think I actually like I drink it in.
Yeah, like Jessica, you'll see, like I think it's super interesting. Like even at the office, like I'll be talking to someone, right, and you immediately it's just classic. You'll immediately see them like just cross their arms, and you just kind of feel tense. And I will purposely say something to actually get them to laugh. Just because I'm trying to get them to just breathe for a second. Another telltale sign you might see is watch people's feet. They actually go up, like when they're anxious.
Really?
It's another, it's people sitting cross-legged, and it's just another telltale sign just to go, oh, that something in them like triggered them. And I think as leaders, it's a good reminder just to go, okay, make sure as we're talking to people too, just to like help people breathe. And even just, if I feel like someone's anxious, a lot of times too, I'll purposely just stop and then continue, because I want us both to breathe, and it just creates this fun reset for everybody, which is fun.
Yeah, for sure. So, Lulu, do you have any questions or anything that you would like to bring up to Pat? I'm actually going to put you on here. So feel free to actually like ask your question in person. Did it work? I think I did, maybe. All right. So I just put you as a presenter. I don't know if it's actually going to let you jump in midway, but it may or may not. But go ahead and just type it in. So while Lulu puts in her question, I know that for me, it has been trying to same thing, balancing my team, balancing my family, and then my career aspirations. And I think for a lot of my team members, they also didn't quite know what their North Star is. Like, how do you figure out, or how as a leader do I help them figure out what their personal North Star is?
Yeah. So I'd say number one, this is where I would say like external motivation comes in handy. What I would say is, number one, just like we talked about today, I think there's a lot of good work about going, what's my current North Star? What's causing me the most anxiety? Like, am I being woken up at night because I'm going, oh my gosh, there's so much to do and I'm so excited, about tomorrow. I'm so excited about the change I get to make in the world. Like, is that the thing that's causing you the anxiety? Or is the anxiety going, oh my gosh, I am like, if we don't close this deal, my friends won't love me anymore. So long story short, where I'm going is that, like, I think number one, just to figure out where you are now. But then I think in terms of inspiration, this is where I go. I think whether it's your faith, whether it's good friends, whether it's just people you read from, like the Stoics, like I think there's a lot of external motivation that can get you to understand what your North Star is. I think for me, like, faith is really important to get a North Star. It allows me to have certain types of compassion, certain ways of like thinking, but I would just say it may be some sort of philosophy. But I'd say I have found that the best North Stars have typically come from, we'll say, an external motivator. That's like, what Buddhist, Christian, whatever it is, it's supposed to help you.
Yeah. So Lulu does have, she said hers is getting the plane off the ground before her runway ends. I'm going to see if she can jump out of the event and jump back in, similar to how we had to do before with yours to reset, and see if that helps. So she can maybe give us a little bit more background on exactly what she's looking for in terms of advice or just perspective on what she's doing. So you have two different companies. You have GAN, which is more of like a studio in helping startups and founders figure out the best way for their companies to move forward. And then you have GAN Ventures, which I know you actually don't have to be part of GAN in order to reach out to GAN Ventures. So can you tell a little bit about the difference between the two organizations and what you look for when you're looking for companies to be a part of either one?
Yeah. So when you think about GAN and GSSN, GAN is the Global Accelerator Network. GSSN is the Global Startup Studio Network. But both of the companies, we're helping accelerators run the best accelerators in the world. We're helping studios run the best studios in the world. So when I come across an accelerator director or studio director, I think so much what I'm looking for is, Lulu just mentioned this here, like what's the North Star? Like what is the thing that you are going, I will do this because it's going to help the next wave of entrepreneurs be successful. I'm doing this because it's going to help my community. So I think number one, having that clear North Star is good for everybody. I think the second thing that we're looking for is, we'll see, like just a weird passion. Like it kind of goes hand in hand with North Star, but it's sort of going like, what's the why? What's the reason you're getting up in the morning? Is it because you want to be financially successful? Is it because you want to give back? But I think a clear why allows us to go, oh, you're going to be in this for the long run. I think the third thing is authenticity seems to go hand in hand with success. I think the short term, there's a lot of, we'll say, non-authentic people who can survive in the short term. But I think the people that survive the long term are the authentic ones. So I think we're really craving authenticity among our people. And then finally, it's like, can you be successful? Can you take your accelerator or studio or even startup, as we're talking about? Can you do that? Can you make a 10x to 100x return on what you're looking to do? Both maybe either impact or financial. And if you do those things, have a clear North Star, deep-seated passion, really awesome authenticity, and scalable model, it's like we will work with you every day of the week, because I feel like those four things make a really, really good leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I think